So I know that we're here to talk about me today, but before we do that, I would like to take a minute to recognize all of the deputies, the dispatchers, the first responders, the medical personnel. These guys are going to work and doing amazing things for our community every single day. It is a team effort, and I think it is absolutely imperative to recognize all of the amazing work that these guys are doing. September 28th, I was conducting my normal patrol duties as a member of the Criminal Interdiction Team. While doing so, I heard a call come out that a vehicle had failed to yield to an attempted traffic stop being conducted by Border Patrol. Shortly after being notified of that, I heard Deputy Paz announce over the radio that he was attempting to conduct a traffic stop on that vehicle, and in doing so, he reported that that vehicle had failed to yield to his traffic stop. I heard Deputy Paz, or I seen his lights and then heard his siren, and I noticed both him and that vehicle coming northbound on Highway 80 towards Tombstone at a high rate of speed. I established a tire deflation devices, or spikes. I stretched them across the roadway. The vehicle passed my location. I made a successful spike on that vehicle, flattening 3 of the 4 tires. And then I seen Deputy Paz continue his pursuit towards that vehicle. I knew that I had to get the spikes out of the roadway. That way I didn't inadvertently spike his vehicle as well. So I started to pull the spikes out of the road. And in doing so, I sustained approximately 17-foot fall. I knew I had sustained serious injuries. I made multiple attempts to call for help, but due to the fall, my equipment was not operating properly as it had broke. I was lucky enough essentially to have a CBS news crew that was with me. The CBS news crew was able to flag down the Border Patrol agent who then rushed down to the bottom of the bridge and began life-saving steps on me. He applied a tourniquet. He made me comfortable. He called back on radio to his dispatch and started speaking with my dispatch, which essentially started the flow of assets and resources to come to my aid. Shortly thereafter, although I don't remember a lot of this, I do remember seeing Cochise County Search and Rescue on station. I remember Fry Fire was on station. I remember additional deputies and Border Patrol agents on station, and all of them came together working as a team in order to get me on a backboard, carry me out of the ravine, and get me back up to the highway where I would then be loaded up onto a medevac bird and flown to Banner UMC in Tucson for additional surgeries and life-saving steps. So I would like to say that I remember what had occurred inside of the hospital. Unfortunately, I do not. What I do know, I remember the support I got in the hospital from my wife, my son, my brother, and his entire family, my parents. In addition, I know that there was other deputies who had arrived at the hospital in support and also to check to see how I was doing. I do know that once I was able to, I got my phone back. I started seeing massive amounts of text messages and Facebook posts from the community, from complete strangers, from my friends, all wishing me the best in a recovery. So after 2 weeks, approximately stay at Banner UMC inside of the hospital, I was moved to an inpatient clinic, work on the overall strength that I needed to start walking and doing things on my own again. I was then sent home. I waited approximately an additional 2 weeks before I was admitted to Canyon Vista Medical Center for additional physical therapy and occupational therapy. Since that point in time, I have been working on regaining the range of motion in my leg and regaining the range of motion in my arm. I work out 2 to 3 times per day with that leg and that arm specifically. I decided very early on, or so I'm told, while I was in the hospital, I was pretty anxious to get back to work and pretty worried about how long I was going to be out of work. So let's fast forward 3 months to where I am at today. And during this interview, I am no longer in a wheelchair. I am no longer on a walker. I can walk on my own with a little bit of assistance from a cane. My range of motion is nearly back inside of my arm. And I am quickly working my way to get back to doing what I love, which is protecting this community and protecting this country. The reason why I believe in it so much is directly derived from my time as a Marine. I spent 20 years in defense of this country. I deployed 7 times. Many of those have been split between Iraq and Afghanistan. I swore an oath multiple times over that I would support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I believe what we are seeing down on the southern border today is a problem. The next thing that we're going to talk about is a couple of statistics. But before we do that, I want you to think about, as I am saying these statistics, what is an acceptable number to you? The majority of these stats are open source information taken from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection website. I'm going to flip right to criminal arrests. If we look at FY20, 2,438 criminal arrests. When we jump up to FY23, there are over 15,000 criminal arrests as a result of what's occurring on our border. When we move down to homicide or homicide suspects or catching known homicide personnel, in FY20, there were 3. In FY23, there were 29. Drug possession, FY20, 386. FY23, over 2,000. Weapons charges being caught at the border, FY20, 49, and FY23, above 300. Known sex offenders, FY20, we've seen roughly 150, and in FY23, we've seen nearly 300. Then we jump all the way back to enforcement actions or total enforcement actions. In FY20, there were just above 646,000. In FY23, there are 3.2 million. Terrorist screenings between ports of entry. In FY20, there were 3. In FY23, there were 169. That is happening at our southern border. And I just want to reiterate, I've gone through the statistics. What is your acceptable number? Mine is 0. So in relation to what we see or what happens to people being smuggled inside of Cochise County is very different from what we are seeing being reported on the news on a regular basis. Normally we see over in Lukeville or Eagle Pass, we see mass bands of migrants coming across the border and turning themselves into Border Patrol. We are seeing the catch and release policy that is releasing those same personnel right on the streets. That's not at all what we see inside of Cochise County. It is very different out here. What we see here is cartel observation points on the southern side of the border. We see people dressed in full camouflage, utilizing the terrain and utilizing the cover of darkness at times and utilizing vegetation to sneak across the border to a pickup point or an extract point to get to their destination. On our side of the border, as far as the smuggler goes, we see individuals who are recruited by the cartels via social media. Those individuals are communicating via non-persistent or encrypted end-to-end communications. And this is all being coordinated with the coyotes or the folks being smuggled on the ground. Once these folks get to their extract point or their pickup point, still in their camouflage, are all placed inside of a vehicle. Some of them are placed in trunks. Some of them are placed in the beds of pickup trucks. Some of them are stacked on top of each other inside of sedans. A decision is made by that smuggler in conjunction with the coordinator on how to get out of Cochise County. Now, I can talk to you a little bit about being on the interdiction team. I've stopped a number of these vehicles, and I've conducted a number of interviews with the undocumented aliens on the ground. I have found that on average, for your normal Mexican citizen or coming from Central or South American citizen, they had to pay $8,000 is the average going rate. It could go up by nationality, but the average going rate that I've heard on the ground is $8,000 for the cartel to smuggle them inside of the country. So here's our problem. They are fleeing their current situation because they don't have money and can't take care of their family. They then make a deal with the cartel to say, I'm going to pay you $8,000 that they don't have. The cartel agrees to smuggle them across the border and get them to an unknown point within our country, but that money has to be paid back. Human trafficking, aka modern-day slavery, because that's what it is. And if we look at those statistics, roughly worldwide, 50 million people worldwide are estimated to be entrapped in modern-day slavery. When we look at the United States, I looked at a 2016 estimated statistics that said roughly 400,000. I seen a recent statistic just within this last week that estimates 1 million people inside of the United States. Roughly 1 in 5 of those are minors. They are children. And of the women associated with that group, they're disproportionately affected by being placed in the sex trade or indentured servitude. When you owe the cartel money, they're going to get their money. you will be coerced, you will be threatened with violence, your family may be threatened with violence. So if there's something that I would like to say to anybody who is running across one of these ads on social media that says, we need a driver, fast cash, quick trip, big money, I'm pleading with you guys, I'm begging you guys, don't do it, because essentially what you are doing is you're participating in the modern day slave trade. The 13th Amendment of the Constitution clearly states that slavery is not accepted within our country.